The Paul Leslie Hour, helping people tell their stories. And now, your host, Paul Leslie.
Hey, it's me. We've got someone very interesting with us. Earl Rose is a pianist, conductor, recording artist, and composer, an Emmy Award winner and 14-time Emmy nominee, as well as 3-time ASCAP Award winner. He's been seen and heard performing in many, many places all around the globe. Many of you have possibly seen him at the Carlyle at Bemelmans Bar. The Carlyle is the landmark hotel located at 35 East 76th Street in Manhattan. I want to give respect and appreciation to Jennifer Cook of the Carlyle for making this interview with Earl Rose a reality. And it's a great pleasure to have him here. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
I'm curious, of the different things that you could categorize yourself as, someone who is a pianist, someone who composes, is there something that you identify most with?
Well, I think basically they're all so intertwined together, and together it's all one. I remember reading years ago, I think when I was a student or something, what Leonard Bernstein, when he had to fill out some sort of application for what his profession was, and he did so many things, musically, he just put musician. So that's sort of the way I just sort of look at it. Like you said, I compose, I conduct, I play, so musician sort of covers it. And no one thing, I find myself, if I'm working on a film project and so forth, and, a lot of times when you do that, you spend a lot of hours at home writing the score and everything. And that becomes very sort of lonely because you're just writing all day, all night and writing. And then, so finally, when that project ends and you go out and perform, like say where I perform at Bemelmans in the Carlyle Hotel, that's so nice to have people around, so I love the balance of both of those times. So it's good to balance it out.
Of the variety of music that you do, there are credits that you have that are jazz, pop music. Would you say that there is a kind of music that is nearest and dearest to your heart?
I think that goes with, and I've thought about that recently a little bit, and I think it's really funny. The type of music that I identify more with, I think, goes with what period of life you're in. I mean, there was a time I guess it was in the 90s, when I had some of these, very fortunate to have some of these recording successes with a lot of R&B artists. And like Brian McKnight, Peabo Bryson, Montel Jordan. I was writing songs with all those guys in the 90s. And that particular time, I was just so immersed in R&B. And right now I find myself immersed in a lot of classical things. I mean, I'm classically trained. So I go to a lot of classical concerts. I was just up in Tanglewood last week listening to things. I'm working on a classical CD. So I think you just go through different phases, I mean, and the other thing, for example, like when I was in college and high school, the Beatles were so huge. I mean, they've always been huge, but that was their time when they were, just sort of starting and out there. And I never really, at that time, appreciated the greatness that they are. I was into my strictly classical and jazz thing. So the Beatles, I knew they were good and everything, but I never got it. Now, I totally get it. And for Steinway, I'm doing a Beatles album. And every time I look at these songs, I think, my God, these are so unbelievable. There's a great simplicity to them that is some of these songs, So you go through phases with these things. I think everybody, I guess it's like artists, and when you say, painters, they have their periods when they're doing one type of thing, or they're doing sculpture, or they're doing, I don't know. I guess it's it's a journey, which I think is pretty cool. Actually, it keeps everything really fresh. You never know what am I going to like next. So it's just,
Interesting. Well, you mentioned this this Beatles project.
Right.
And then also a classical project?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're a very busy man.
Yeah. Yeah, the other project actually, and I'm starting a new film shortly, which I can't really talk about, but I'm starting another film in a couple of weeks. So that's going to keep me busy, So I did this film. There was a documentary out just recently. It's still playing in a lot of cities around the country, actually, called Always at the Carlyle.
Yeah.
And it's a documentary on the history of the Carlyle Hotel. George Clooney is in it, Harrison Ford is in it, Sophia Coppola, Angelica Houston, a whole bunch of people. And it's really a story of, it's just basically a documentary about, how the hotel got built, what was the motivation behind it, and the current hotel. And I did the score to it. And the score has so many different styles of music that were needed because there are paintings in the lobby from the 16th century. So the director and I were saying, well, we should do something in that flavor. So I had to write a piece in the very classical field. And there's another piece where I'm using sort of like a Mozartian type of thing. And then there's stuff later on where I'm doing some close to very, hip hop kind of R&B kind of stuff. And then there's some jazz. And so it's all over the map. That was a lot of fun to work on. The director, Matthew Miele, he's a great director to work with, and so we had a good time doing this thing. So
I just watched that documentary last night. Always at the Carlyle.
Right.
What did you think of it?
Oh, I loved it.
Yeah, me too.
No, I loved it. I mean, I think it gives a flavor of it's there's so many there's a lot of uniqueness to that hotel. So many other places try and be very hip, and they're getting this, and they try and just make it so cool. But the Carlyle has maintained a certain steadiness in that area. It's not that they're old fashioned, but they're just sort of steady, and they're not trying to be the hippest hotel on the block. And by doing that, they probably are the hippest hotel on the block. It's like, it's like in the 60s and the 70s with the Rat Pack. Everybody tried to start to emulate them. They weren't trying to imitate anybody. The Sinatra and all those guys. They were just being themselves, and by being themselves, that was being very cool. So it's interesting. But the film, I'm glad you liked it because it was a good film. So.
How would you describe the Carlyle to someone who had never been there?
Carlyle is a hotel that was built in the 1920s, and it has so many different parts to it. There's the part where I play is Bemelmans Bar, and one of the most beautiful places you'll ever go to because the walls were painted by Ludwig Bemelman, who did all the Madeline characters, for children, the storybook. And the walls were painted by him in 1947. The manager of the hotel at that time was a very appreciative art connoisseur and decided that they wanted to get this artist to paint the walls. So they had him stay in the hotel, and his compensation for painting the walls was he and his family could stay in the hotel. And as they say in the movie, sort of the running gag was that he kept on painting these things because he never wanted to leave a hotel. so anyway, so that, and then there's the dining room, and of course then you've got the Cafe Carlyle, which is another entertainment venue in the hotel that features artists. Well, Bobby, the noted wonderful singer, pianist Bobby Short there played for 30 years there. And then Eartha Kitt played there. Barbara Cook played there right now. Herb Alpert plays there once a year with his wife, Lanny Hall, which is terrific. And Steve Tyrell performs there. And they get a whole bunch of artists that come in there. So they keep that live entertainment thing going. It's the one place in New York City that I would say has always kept live entertainment, and that's an integral part of it. And as a musician, of course, I mean, when I was in the 60s and 70s and 80s in New York City, there were a million places that had pianists. Now you're lucky if you can count 5. And the irony is that all the places that don't have music, they do okay, but they don't do as well as the Carlyle, and the Carlyle has music. So there's something to be said about that. And then the guests that stay at the hotel range from just some of the great, superstars of the world to people that are just coming into New York who just want to see a wonderful place, So it's got a great history to it.
You mentioned just a moment ago the late Bobby Short.
Right.
Did you ever meet him?
Yes, I did. And I didn't know him well, but we certainly knew each other. And we had numerous conversations. I remember one when I was working on I had an idea that I was going to maybe do a Victor Young album, the wonderful composer of great songs like My Foolish Heart and Love Letters and a lot of great standards. And I wanted to learn some Victor Young songs that maybe I didn't know. So, I knew he knew the composers very well, their output, from that period. So we had a nice little conversation, and he gave me some really good gems that I'd never heard of at the time and found, and I loved them. They're beautiful songs, some of the ones he suggested.
In the documentary, you talk about performing at the Bemelmans Bar at the Carlyle there with Billy Joel.
Yeah, he for a period, it was really funny. He would come in just on the spur of the moment, and he'd sit down with me, and we'd sort of play four-hand piano, and we would go through we had it down so that he would do this numerous times. So after a while, I sort of knew what he would do, and he sort of knew what I would do. So we sort of worked as a joke, but it's almost like a 2-minute comedy routine. We would, play, like, for example, Amos Behavin' or, Blue Moon or something. And he would sit to my left, and he would play for a while. And then we'd switch within the same song, and I'd turn around, and without missing a beat, I'd be playing the left-hand side, and he'd be playing the right-hand side. So we had the choreo down very well. It was really funny. So when people were stunned, and then he'd come in and he would just do that, and then he would leave. He would just come in and play for 3 minutes and leave, and it was like a Halley's Comet coming through, So it was a lot of fun.
In addition to Billy Joel, you were mentioning earlier, you said there's just so many people who you could possibly see there on any given day or night.
Right.
Has there been somebody that when you saw them, you just gasped? You were almost shocked, like, oh my gosh, who was it?
Oh, I mean, there are. I mean, a lot of them, a lot of them, I think, want their privacy. So I don't want to say, I mean, that's actually part of the allure of the Carlyle, is that there are people that come in there that you can't believe that are in there, but they're in a corner, but nobody bothers them. I mean, people know that they're there, but there's something about the place. No, don't go over. Leave them alone. Don't go over for an autograph. There's something, whereas if you were at another place, oh, look who's here, let's go get an autograph. I cannot tell you how many, we're talking major, it doesn't get bigger. Rock stars, they mentioned the movie Mick Jagger comes in. Yeah, Mick Jagger comes in. Nobody bothers him. They don't go over to him. Because they know, this doesn't feel right if I go over to him. So there's that. It sets off that tone. There's a tone to the place that makes it so that they have their privacy, which is obviously everybody wants privacy in this day and age where everything is so public, So yes, there have been. Now I can tell you one person that has been in there recently that I sort of gasped, and it was just lovely, was Francis Ford Coppola.
Oh wow!
And he was great. He has a very wide knowledge of American popular music. So we talked about Rodgers and Hart for a little while, and it was lovely. It was a lovely conversation. So
we're joined by pianist and composer Earl Rose. I'm hoping you can tell us a little bit about your origins. Where are you from?
I'm from New York City, and I grew up in New York City and attended the Mathis College of Music here in New York, wonderful conservatory for music during college, and basically really New York all my life. I remember growing up in the 60s and 70s and going to some amazing concerts Carnegie Hall, and, seeing Arthur Rubinstein and Vladimir Horowitz, all these great classical artists, as well as some of the great pop artists, Lena Horne, Frank Sinatra, all these wonderful entertainers, Sammy Davis Jr., all those people, so I very fortunate to live in New York City, and then I basically, did a lot of, starting in the mid-70s, I did a lot of touring around the country with concerts. At the time, my management was Columbia Artists Management, and they booked me many, 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 many cities. One year in 1990, it was Irving Berlin's 100th birthday, and through the booking of Columbia Artists, I did a tour with a 12-piece orchestra. I was the conductor and arranged and started the show, and it was called the Irving Berlin Century, and we played 106 cities in 17 weeks. Is that unbelievable?
Wow.
So I'd never been in better shape, though, afterwards, I'll tell you that. Playing the piano every night. It was great. So that's good. So a lot of concerts, and then I eventually, in the mid-70s, I started writing for my first television music assignment, really, of any substance, was writing songs for Captain Kangaroo, believe it or not, the children's show, which was a great opportunity to write songs and so forth, And before that, just a little bit before that, while I was in college, I started working part-time for The Tonight Show, which you're probably aware of that, So I started working for The Tonight Show with the band and Doc Severinsen, and that continued for the duration of the show until it went off the air. I did it on a part-time basis. I would go out to LA, and that's what started getting me out to go out to LA. Actually, when they moved to LA from New York, I would go out there occasionally when I was requested, and it got me started familiar, and that's what sort of got me into my LA scene. And then in the 90s, I moved there for a while, for about 10, 12 years, as well as maintained the residence here in New York, and went back and forth quite a bit, because I always loved to keep playing, and there are not many places in LA to perform like like Carlyle or some of the other places that I was performing here. So I always wanted to maintain that New York presence to be able to play, because if I wasn't composing all the time in LA, it was driving me nuts to just sit around and not be playing. So I needed that constant performing thing going, so.
You were mentioning at the beginning of the interview about some of the pop recordings that you have. I just want to tell the listeners a few of them. Every Beat of My Heart, co-written by Brian McKnight.
Right.
Love is a Gift, co-written by Olivia Newton-John.
And Victoria Shaw, a wonderful songwriter from Nashville. That Love with a Gift actually just got re-recorded again by Olivia Newton-John. They did just found out about this about 3 or 4 weeks ago. They've done in Australia, they've done a movie on the life of Olivia Newton-John. And the woman who plays her in the film, her name is Delta Goodwin, she recorded Love is a Gift again, and Olivia does it as a duet with her, and it's on a new album of Delta's, and it's a huge hit in Australia at the moment. I mean, I think it reached number 2 on the charts down there, So it's always, you never know when you write a song if it's going to get re-recorded again, which is always wonderful, which was the case actually with Every Beat of My Heart. Brian McKnight recorded it, and then about 2 or 3 years after that initial very successful record, Johnny Mathis recorded it, which was really terrific also. I mean, just terrific. So, recordings, and the Peabo Bryson thing, I Found Love. And the first Johnny Mathis thing I had was from the TV show Ryan's Hope, a song called Right from the Heart, which I wrote with Kathy Wakefield. And that was nice. That was great.
I'm hoping you can actually tell us about the co-writer, Victoria Shaw.
Victoria is terrific. I mean, she's written so many songs with Garth Brooks, and she's a major Nashville songwriter, and she's a wonderful singer and performer, and just a wonderful person, just a wonderful spirit. And she's constantly writing. She's smart, and she produces a bit as well. She wrote The River, John Michael Montgomery, I guess. She's written a lot of successful songs. I mean, a lot of successful songs. And so we haven't worked together in a while, but when we were doing these songs for a lot of different TV shows, we were having a blast. It was great.
Well, what do you look for in a collaborator? What's the talents that you look for, and also as far as personality? In any facet, I mean, not just co-writing songs, just if you're working for someone, with someone.
You're just looking for somebody to be as interested in the project as you are, and also someone who you feel is in tune with you, and with that, and also someone who's going to stretch you too. I mean, really, that's important. Also, I'd say that applies especially with sometimes with directors, because you have your idea of what the music should be for a film, and the director, he may have his, and you got to talk that through. I've never had an issue where it's been like at loggerheads or anything, but I've been in situations where the studio may feel that they want a certain type of music in some particular scene and so forth. And when you're writing a film, you have to remember you're not writing a piece for yourself. You're not writing music for yourself. You're writing, it's a collaboration between you, the director, and so you have to be very aware of that thing. Most of the time, directors leave me alone, but you have to be aware that they have an input that's extremely. It's their movie. It's basically their movie, and you're one element of that movie. So your first obligation is the film.
Who would you like to work with that you haven't yet?
Actually, there's a singer right now. Well, she's been around for a little while that I just think is terrific. Is Melody Gardot.
Oh yeah,
she is just a great singer. I would love to work with her, or write some arrangements for her, or write some songs. I think she's terrific. So anyway, that's one. One of my projects that I'm going to be doing is also talking about different projects. I have fallen in love with. I go to Spain each year to perform concerts, and I've fallen in love with the music of Frédéric Mompou, who's a Catalan composer. And I'm definitely going to do a matter of fact, I've already started a CD of his music, my interpretations of it. He's a classical composer, but his music lends itself to some ideas that I have for improvisation. So I'm gonna, I may enlist cellists and some other instruments that I might write for to do arrangements of his music. So, there's some wonderful musicians out there, and we'll see who I end up with. You never know. Maybe I'll go to Yo-Yo Ma. You never know. He does these kind of projects. Who knows?
It would be very cool.
Yeah.
And as for Miss Gardot, if you're listening, get in touch with Earl Rose.
Yeah. So, yeah, no, it's right now I'm playing a lot of classical music, which I love doing, so like I said, we go through phases, so.
Who would you say your favorite piano players are?
In the classical world, I would say that Horowitz, Rubinstein. I love Martha Argerich. I think she's amazing. I think Alicia de la Rocha's playing was magnificent. Catalan pianist who died several years ago, but wonderful creative artist. So beautiful. She would play Spanish repertoire. Especially speaking of Mompou, she would play his repertoire. Just gorgeous. And then in the jazz world, I would say Oscar Peterson and Bill Evans and Andre Previn, and those would be the ones that and some of the lesser known ones that are just giants. So Tommy Flanagan, Barry Harris, some of those guys are just amazing.
Would it be possible for you to describe the typical New Yorker?
The typical New Yorker?
Yeah.
Well, that's a good question, because I was just the other day I was on the subway, and I was thinking that actually question what now the typical New Yorker is so different from the typical New Yorker of 15, 20 years ago, because this city is now it's a world city. It always was, but now it really is a world city. You could hear so many languages. You go on a New York City subway, you could hear so many languages you wouldn't believe it. It's unbelievable. So the typical New Yorker now is a citizen of the world. That's what I would say. That's really what I would say, because it's no longer your '60s Mad Men image. You know what I mean? It's a citizen of the world. From every part of the world that you could possibly imagine, you will find somebody here. So that's what that would be my description.
What are you most proud of?
I would say that this maybe that I'm able to, after being a musician all my life and never luckily having to do something else, that I've been able to do that and to do that. And I'm also proud of the fact that I feel very touched when I know that that I have, my music has made an impact on them. Just last night, give you an example. A couple came in. I was playing last night at the Carlyle, and a couple came in, and when I took my break, they said, "We just want to tell you we've been watching you coming here for 8 years." And I recognized them. I don't think I'd ever really had any conversations with them. But they said to me, "We came in here 8 years ago, and we'd only been dating for 3 months. And we've come since then. We've gotten married. And tonight is our last day, the last time in New York. We are moving to Portland, Oregon." And they said, "We had to come here because you've been such an important part of our life for that 8 years." And I never really talked to these people. So I find that very moving. I really do. So, and I sort of was speechless to them except to thank them. I mean, isn't that sweet?
Yeah. Yeah. There was a gentleman, Jack Phillips is his name, who tweeted at us and said, "I have many, many fond memories of experiencing Earl Rose playing the piano."
Ah.
So, what's the most touching thing someone has told you? Is it what this couple said?
I think it's been when several years ago, you make me remember, let me see if I remember this right. I remember a lady came in with her elderly father. This is quite a while ago. Father got sick, was in the hospital, and she actually requested me to put together a little recording of a favorite song or two of his that she could play in the hospital. So there you go.
Wow.
And I did it. And she said that it made him so happy.
Wow, that's very nice.
So you don't know when you're going to touch somebody. And you always have to just, it's reaching out. And even if it's not verbally, it's reaching out. When anybody does something, if you can reach out to another person and have an impact on them, I think you're a lucky person.
Very true. I always like to close my interviews. I just give the guests the stage. Just let them take the microphone. Very open-ended. You can go anywhere you want. What would you say to anyone who's listening in?
I would say that it's important in our lives to give ourselves the privilege of doing something that we truly enjoy and really trying to find out what that is and not being afraid to go for it. I know a lot of people who are very, very wealthy who are not very happy. They never pursued, for whatever reason, what their real dream was. And I think it's important, really important, to just try and find that. And even if your person is not sure of what that is not to be discouraged by that, and just to keep a very, very open mind every day to their surroundings and let things in. Let as much of the surroundings that you have in your life, wherever you are, let that sort of cover you and surround you. And maybe some of that'll get into you and you'll find something that does does the trick for you. But mainly it's not being afraid to pursue what dreams you might have. Because you may not always get them, but if you don't try, you're for sure not going to get them.
Yeah.
So that's that pretty much, I think, what I would say.
My last question. Who is Earl Rose?
Who is Earl Rose? Earl Rose is a very fortunate person to have very, very good friends and part of the world of music, who's able to luckily produce and play every day and wake up with a feeling of looking forward to doing that. So very lucky person.
And we're very lucky to have you on the show. Thank you very much for spending time with us.
My pleasure. I'm very glad you asked. Thank you so much.
Been a joy.
Okay.
All right. Happy trails.
You take care.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
The Paul Leslie Hour is hosted, produced, and written by Paul Leslie for Lifestyles Entertainment and Media. The Paul Leslie theme song composed, recorded, and produced by Jeff Pike. Outro music composed, recorded, and produced by John Goodwin, originally appearing in the short film Malukas and Vulnerable Jelly Things. Please consider subscribing to the Paul Leslie Hour, and if you like us, give us a review. It'll help other people to find this content. All past interviews are also available on YouTube. For more information, you can visit thepaulleslie.com and be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter @ThePaulLeslie. Thanks for listening. Be good.